Hey Pablo, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm really good, thanks. Really, really good. Really, really grateful I get to chat to you about this extraordinary film. Congratulations. Wow.
Pleasure, please.
Yeah, just absolutely wonderful. I hope I you don't mind me going back to the beginning to before this film to this woman, really, and this, from someone who grew up in a little tiny fishing village in Scotland, opera felt like almost as far away as Star Wars did in a galaxy far, far away in terms of
Yeah,
it felt really inaccessible. And it's only in my adult life that I realized that that's not the case, and how accessible it is and the power that it can have. What's your journey with this, with Maria, with this beautiful way of expressing and communicating through opera?
I went to the opera with my mom as I grew up, and I started pretty much at the age of I have a daughter that has pretty much the same age when I started, like kind of like 8, 9. And she comes and says, "Why is these people screaming?" I was like, they're not screaming, they're singing. No, they're screaming, Dad. They're screaming. They're screaming to each other. Uh, And I'm like, no, no, no. I'm gonna show you something. But however, yeah, my mom would take me to the opera as I grew up. It's not just the opera. They would acquire these sort of year tickets, on the
Yeah.
um, and so they were concert, ballet, and of course opera. Um, so I grew up with that, and I was very intrigued by it, and then I got to, obviously, like in the 90s or late 80s, I got to start listening to pop and rock music. And I wonder about the connections, what happened in these centuries that we got here.
Mm.
Mm, but it's really about that. It's about having the habit of going to the opera house. And I was very lucky because of that. I've met a lot of people in the journey of this film that grew up with Callas because some of or a parent or a great parent would just play it, just played Callas at home on a record,
Yeah.
like I said. But my initiation with Callas was really about opera in the opera world, and then understanding that she probably became who she was because she was someone that, among other things, had the capacity to burn herself
Mm.
and died a little bit every time she sang, and that create a very emotional and unique kind of voice coming out of her.
And with regards to this project and the script from Stephen Knight, and how did that come about, in terms of Stephen writing it, you directing it? What was the journey of that? And because you come with such a, like you say, in terms this is something, this world has been part of your world from growing up. It's kind of you have your own connections with opera personally. But talk to me how this particular project was presented to you, or
But
how
you
it
don't,
worked with.
I don't think you need to have such a opera connection to be a connoisseur on opera because it's so universal. I remember I called Steve. I said, Steve, I want to make a movie about Maria Callas, and
Yeah.
I like to sing it on the last week of her life. And Angelina would play it. So would you write it? You want to write it? And he said, I
Amazing.
love Callas. I love Callas. I heard all of my life to Callas, and he started talking about what he knew about Callas.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, he knows a lot. It's not, I don't know how much he knows about opera,
Yeah.
uh, but Callas is a universal, and same of, think about every head of department. Think about Ed Lachman. I don't think Ed was an opera specialist before making this movie, or even
Hmm.
Guy Hendricks. Um, Probably Massimo, our costume designer. It was some, he's Italian, so probably uh, among all of the people, there was someone who knew the most, but it's easy to connect with because
Yeah.
it's and that is something that it's also the aim of this film to maybe to put the opera outside of the elitism of certain circumstances that are surrounding opera, and try to put it back to the people where it belongs, to the masses, where it started. And there's an aim that's not coming from us because we want to be nice people. It's
Mhm.
coming because Maria Callas did that. She
Yeah.
really worked it out all of her life to do that, to open it.
Um, yeah. Why, and am I right in thinking that it could only, for you, for this pro it could only ever have been Angelina if she'd said no, there was no film?
Yeah, it would have been very complicated. I had no idea what to do if
Mhm.
she would have passed. Um, there's I keep saying this, but it's true. I think I read, I don't remember, 8, 9 biographies, from the most old ones to the more new ones. I saw every documentary, every press interview that is on YouTube, and
Hmm.
then read books and made this movie, and I don't really know who she was. And I think that speaks about the incredible amount of mystery that Maria Callas had, and and even people could say that, oh, they would talk to you about, the gossip around Nazis, and did this and
Yeah.
did that, and people that knows more would say, yeah, but in 64 she had this, and then in 70, in 57 this is what happened, da da da, right? But you don't really know who she was.
No.
And I think that happens with Angelina too. You think you know because of her presence in the media, but you don't know who she was. And I think that is people that carry a very truthful and meaningful sense of mystery.
Yeah.
And I think that is filmable. You won't find the resolution, but you can feel the mystery. And that is, I think, the first interaction that I saw among them. And then I found a great actress with a lot of discipline who did a beautiful job. So.
How did you how did you convince her to convince herself to do it?
I didn't do it. I couldn't do it because when I talked to her on the phone, I said, would you do this? And she went silent on the other side. And I was about to, start to kind of like seduce her with my ideas about the film and her. Um, and she said, okay, let's talk in a couple of days. Okay. And then she called me back and said, okay, I'll do it. And then after she said that, we started the process, but she did her own, I guess she did her own research, and then a lot of thought, she really
Yeah.
thought about.
Yeah. And the other kind of, the commitment you were talking about there, and in terms of what she gives to this performance. And I love just going back to what you were saying about no one really knows Palace. And I was one of the many things I love about the film is like you allow the audience to make up their own mind about what she was going through and this time that we see her in. And it's so immersive as well, just in terms of you feel like you're in her dressing room with her, or you feel like, you're sat at the table, or you can almost like hear the piano being moved in your own room. Do you know what I mean? From the side, it's so immersive. It's
Yeah,
wonderful. Um, but in terms of her preparation for this, did that not surprise you? But you've worked with some incredible people in your previous films. In terms of the kind of the commitment they bring to that to when you're ready to make this film. And but this was different. This asked a lot of her. This asked the rawness of those performances, and those, but not just those performances, the performances of a woman in that state of mind at that point in her life. So it's a specific ask of how she's performing that as well, and it's extraordinary.
thank
What
you.
did she kind of come to you and go, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm off to do this for 7 months or whatever it was. Was that kind of just part of the journey of you both working out this relationship, between the two of you, and how the film would be made? And
It's a great way to put it. For me, it was very difficult to understand what was the right path because
hmm
um, there isn't one, and because there isn't a lot of experience. Movies about opera singers, there are very few,
mm,
and so there's nothing that I could relate to. There wasn't an interview from an actor that played a singer that we could learn from, an opera singer, I mean. So,
Yeah.
but I did felt that that the best way to do it was through her music. So before we start having like more intellectual conversations on the character, who she was and how to play her and that, my obsession became her musical training.
Yeah.
Um, I felt that was the best way for her to approach the character, and for me to feel how her process was going into was the best way to sort of get into her process as she was learning to sing and getting its
Hmm.
piece. So it's really a lot in the singing as a process, and then finding the way she spoke, not in the singing voice, but in the speaking voice, that was coming from also the music, because of the breathing, the posture. It's all involved. Um, so yeah, somewhere there.
Mm. And even the way she walks, it's kind of it's the whole kind of physical, it's almost levitational in a way as well. It's almost holding a note, in terms of
Yeah.
in the way she walks, with that beautiful shot as she's coming out of that, you see the leaves on the streets, and you kind of we're looking down the street, and she comes out down the steps, and you almost don't see her knees move because it's almost like she's gliding like a musical note as well. And that fluidity is
Well,
so
I love that.
evident.
I'm gonna steal it from you.
but it's but it does. There's so much fluidity between, as she kind of moves between those different situations that we see her in, whether that is performance or, whether that is trying to find pills in her dressing gown. It's kind of like,
No, but it's true. What I think it is just it's a very beautiful capacity
mm,
to embody a state of mind,
yeah,
and form something that it could be a sound, as you say, or it could be, an idea of protection from the outside.
yeah,
She's been shielding, it's like a shield. She's shielding herself from the world in the
mm,
way that her physicality exists.
yeah. She was so young. She passed away so young. It was such a waste of such
And what
an
is very
extra.
unusual is how young she lost her voice. That is really unusual.
Yeah, yeah.
Opera
It's so I
singers
felt.
sang, until early mid-60s, easy.
Yeah.
And she lost her voice 15 years or 18 years before that. So
I heard you talking a lovely chat that you had with Angelina, and one of the things that was incredible that you talked about was when you had gone to the opticians
yeah,
and he had said to you, "Do you want to see what it's like, what it was like for her, in terms of what she could see?"
yeah.
That, I mean, it sounds like such a weird little trivial thing to pick up on, but how important was that,
No, it's
just
not.
in,
It's not. It's big.
yeah.
It's big. And I called her right out, from the doctor. I just sat down and I could not believe what I've just seen.
Mm.
And that explains a lot. I went to see my reading glasses, like these ones. And then the guy, it's very funny because he's like, "Oh, so you're the filmmaker? Yeah, yeah, yes, yes. Okay. Oh, so what are you doing next?" "Well, I'm doing a movie about a singer, about Maria Callas." "Oh, really?" And he knew exactly. He was just like playing dumb. And he was like, "Okay, full disclosure. I am a crazy fan of Callas. I've dedicated my life. I know everything and a lot about her." And we started talking, and he really knew. Like, you can tell when someone knows about music, he was a specialist. And he said, that um, because of this, and then a friend of mine in France, a doctor as well, found like the doctor's paper when they tell you what you have from Callas. And I'm like, "I've never seen that." "Well, I did." Like, whatever. So he sat me down in the chair, and they put you this thing here. They would just
Mhm.
change the glasses.
Yeah.
and she says, I'm gonna do the mathematics and I'll show you exactly how she saw. And it was just like this. This is was on focus. And everything was just blurred. And I come back home and I see these top shots of certain pictures of the stage,
Yeah.
and she had these big marks, you know, and she could barely see the conductor. It
Wow.
was blurred. It was just like, so what happened is it was when she became so important, everyone was following her. It's not that the conductor was like, like singers have, an eye on the conductor or like a half
Mm.
eye, and then someone that is usually, I don't know how to say in English, but in the whole, not in the
Yeah.
orchestra, but it's helping the singers in the other singer. But when she would turn around and sing towards another singer, she was probably not seeing nothing.
Wow. Also really emphasizes that isolation almost in a way as well, in terms of that like kind of loneliness almost in a way.
Isolation, and also where if you don't see well, then the sound world becomes more relevant. It's like in
Yes.
any of the senses that,
Yeah, one's
um,
diminished and the others are heightened.
right. If you lose your smell, then your taste will become more relevant and so on. Uh, but it's more than isolation. I would say that her internal world was very developed, and I
Mm.
think her ghosts were all musical. Um, and I think this movie tries to film that idea of perception. Whatever
Yeah.
she's feeling can be filmed, we hope.
I really found comfort for her in those moments where she's, whether you want to call them hallucinations or those kind of dreams or the ghost sort of thing. I almost found kind of comfort for her in those moments where she was able to have a conversation with that person or be with them or argue with them or whatever it was. It's such a I don't know, it's a really beautiful gift to give her as a character, I think. It's just
Yeah.
it's really, 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 really beautiful. Was that in all part of the script and when you're talking about with Stephen and his knowledge on her, you know, but also just going back to that and writing that him writing the script of of what you both saw this film being and why focus on this particular very short part of her life and
Well,
in the way.
because what this is what it is. I think that if you really listen to her work and understand more and more about her life and work, you understand that she sang most of the times tragedies, and she was
Mm,
often death at the very end of the opera on the stage. So my theory is that this is the first thing I said to Steve, and then he did a beautiful job with that. I didn't know how to, I wouldn't have known how to do it, how to write it, but that's him, and that's wonderful that he can do it. But it was like, Steve, I'd like to make a movie about this woman, the very last days of her life, when she becomes the sum of the tragedies that she played. Um, okay, and then when like with that, we start to build this idea that she's someone um that was there to die if needed, that she was never scared of it,
hmm
and that this movie could be a celebration of that tragedy, a celebration of her life and music, and then I think it's the music that really conducts the film structure more than
Yeah.
anything.
How did you decide on, kind of the place and the purpose of music within the film? And, in traditional senses, you have a score for a film, even when you do have performances in films sometimes. But but with this, what was the kind of the I guess the journey for you in terms of what pieces were going to be performed, how they would be performed, and then if and how and why you might or might not need music in other parts of the film.
Well, I thought about a musical structure that I'll tell you something incredible. So I had two things to that I wanted to do when
Mm,
choosing the music for the film. One is that I had to love it. personally, and I am the first audience. I assume that, I deal with that, I live with that, and the second one after that first filter was like, can we make a movie that somehow um, explore her legacy and at the same time shows to new people who she was,
Mm,
right? Because I really care about opening this and making it as popular as possible, considering to be opera, right? So I design, besides those elements, a form of a musical map, like a hidden musical map where each piece, so say that there's an opera, whatever that is, and then we're picking up one piece from that opera and we're placing it in the film.
hmm.
Uh, and when we do that, what I try to do is that the dramatic situation where the character is living in the opera, in that opera, should be similar to the dramatic situation that she's going through in the movie.
Wow.
So then when we subtitle it, people would make a connection. And then I
Wow.
saw with the subtitles, and I was like, this is horrible. So we took it out. We took all the subtitles out because they were just killing the emotion and
Yeah.
making that emotion experience be too rational. And we did. And what is incredible is that it still works. You still feel the same thing without
Hmm.
any of the words of understanding any of the words that she's saying, because the music is so relevant and so powerful that somehow it guides the emotional structure of the film. But um, so when she's in Ave Maria at the beginning, she's praying. It's a prayer from Otello, from Verdi. And then she's singing to her father on Bio Papino Caro. Then when she's on the street and the Hammond choirs from Madama Butterfly comes in, you understand that just like the character Shio-Shio-san, she's uneasy and can't sleep. And then when she's in Ana Bolena, she's begging for her life because she was being sent to uh, the the jail where she's going to be beheaded in London, actually. And then she sings at the end, she sings, Visit d'arte, I live for art. Why are you doing this to me? So it's all really related, but you don't need the words.
You've written your own opera basically within the structure of the film, really. Constructed your own, almost like, in terms of people refer to it's a musical film, it's an opera film where it's so clever,
There's a moving proscenium in here.
so clever.
Thank you. It's a stage that is in motion
Mm.
more than
I have I have to mention Pier Francesco and Alba as well, who are I want a spin-off film of just where what happens to
yes.
those two
We have played
afterwards.
with the idea.
Oh,
It's fantastic.
I love them so much.
It's fantastic. They're the best.
Oh, how much was, in terms of like, with scripts and filming and the different way that directors work, those the relationship between the three of them um is just feels so authentic and so uh so warm, and kind of, the care for each other sort of thing is just, it kind of just bleeds out of the screen. Did you give them much kind of did they improvise at all, or is it all to script? Because just everything
No, it's a
about.
mix of things. It's a mix of things. But I think when you work with great actors, the word improvisation, you can use that word, but I wouldn't. You can
Mm,
say that. It's probably it might be appropriated, but what I think it is just like they're just living with
yeah,
truth, and
yeah.
that can be captured. And they're great actors, and they bring an incredible intelligence, but mostly incredible sensibility toward the role.
Mm,
And what I think they did very beautiful is that they became the shields, the shadows of Callas, and by doing so, they became um, the family of
yeah.
Callas, and that is something very beautiful and moving. But I'm with you, and it's related to obviously a great reaching by Steve, but there's something amazing in who they are as performers and the life that they carry towards the camera.
I love that even you want the spin-off. That's great to know that you you've got it in there. It's like, oh, maybe. Yeah, it's really, really, really beautiful. How was the recording of those live moments? Because they're so, they're for Angelina to perform them, it's so, I mean, just to go there as a performer, to allow that rawness to be, to be captured. Um, it's a stunning performance across the entire film, but each performance, each piece has its own story and narrative and emotion connected to where she is at that time. But what was it like for you filming those particular parts, those musical moments with her? And because I love as well how you hear the fragility in her voice at times, or you hear the kind of cough, or you hear just that truthfulness that's being
Yeah.
reflected in the way that you shot it
Oh,
as
she
well.
she had to sing.
Mm.
She had to sing and had to really do it in front of us. You can't cheat that. And that
Yeah.
preparation was very long, and it was based on her really singing out loud in front of us. And everything that sounded on that set was her voice. There was no like backup music play loud. She had an earpiece, as I
Hmm.
did, um, and she was just singing. And then we mixed it in a very old-fashioned way.
Hmm.
Uh, we like brought Carla's voice, but there's always a fragment of Angie's voice in there. And if she's coughing and if something happens, it's real.
Yeah.
Uh, so I think it's really it's performing, but it's really caring for any idea of truth, I believe.
And did that also, to capture that in the most authentic way as well, did you have to consider where you shot, in terms of acoustics and things like that, to allow that performance? Because for her to sing in those environments, she could hear it. She's kind of aware of
Well,
how
it's a
she,
mix of things, a mix of things that because it has to work for everyone. It has to work for that
absolutely,
production,
yeah.
for lighting, for sound. So when you choose the places, everyone has an opinion, and
Mm,
sound in this movie had an opinion that was as important as everyone else. So we do care about being able to capture the sounds well. We
mm,
will like worked a lot in theaters where they're a good place for that.
mm,
Um, and her apartment had good soundproof too, so we did care, and I think it's important because, and it's a very good question because this is a movie that the at least 50% of whatever happens, or even more, it's in the sound space, and
mm,
that's where it all works. So yeah, it's this is Steve wrote in the script. This movie is about the voice.
mm. Yeah. I mean, the collaboration across the board it's a beautiful relationship. The production design, the costumes, all of it. It's just this kind of glorious kind of recipe of yeah, it just it's brilliant. It works so well. And I love as well. I think that for me, you're talking about, you really hope that this is a good way of of opera being appealing, and I think that the way that you've told such a beautiful emotional story, and that human connection is the key in for people. It's not about the key in through opera, it's the key in through this woman and the emotion that you feel watching this film that pulls you in to go, I want to see more opera, I want to learn more about it. So
I
I
hope
think
that
you've done a
happens.
beautiful job.
If that would be something that could create the film and more people would be interested in opera, then it's a beautiful success. Then
Mm.
just if just a bunch of people do it, it would be enough.